Now, let me ask another general question, but which you can relate to other things that we saw. Why make a documentary film? Why would anybody want to do this?
I'm not so. Is it like a general question
Yeah,
or
but
about?
it can relate to. I'll come to the specifics.
Okay.
But in general terms, why make a documentary film?
Um, for me, I think we need to make documentary films because we need to tell our own stories. And part of telling our own stories is through documentaries because at least documentaries reflect to the real life stories that we have. So audience can really connect with us more and in telling our own stories through documentaries as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I see documentaries as a long form of news, just like an extensive dig or dive into a topic. And so documentaries are just like books. It's like a book telling a story about a historical book, let's say. And so a documentary is just like a visual book, which, as Africans, we like using our eyes more than many other parts of our body. So, and yeah, I think so. It's a medium that really resonates with us a lot. And you can, I mean, when you go back small into history, you see that Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah knew this and made the state invest heavily in the film industry, making a lot of documentaries that unfortunately got destroyed. But yeah, I think it resonates with us a lot. Documentaries just it's nice.
What do we make documentaries about?
What do we make documentaries about subjects that we find interesting as a storyteller, as a filmmaker. There are different stories that really come to us through different mediums, and documentary happens to be one of the very mediums. So I feel like people really make films or make stories about subjects that are of interest to them, and documentary just happens to be one of the mediums.
Again, from a general perspective, how do I make a documentary?
I mean, first you need to get the idea, have a topic that you want to look at, and then you do a research on the topic and know the the places that you can go to get all the stories together. And through your research, you can find your characters, people that are involved in the topics. So then you start, you first go to them and have a conversation with them. And then that's where you're able to even shape your story and know the direction that you want to go with your topic. Because some of the topics are really broad and maybe you want to narrow it down to a specific part. So through your research and talking to them, you get to know the direction that you want to go with your story. And then now you if you have the money, then you now schedule and put together a crew. And then now you can go and start shooting. That's, I mean, the general ways.
Do you want to add anything? Otherwise, I'd like to ask a follow-up question.
No, I was just listening.
So how do you get your cast for a particular subject once you decide on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's through the research that you are doing that you're going to get your cast and you get to know that, okay, if it's about music, you know that, and what kind of music that you want to focus on. Is it the alternate kind of music that you want to make a documentary on? And through your research, you might find out that maybe Kubolor is good with that. He has a lot of knowledge in that, and you can have a conversation with him, and then you can add it to your cast, and then you go on further to research more and add a lot of people to your cast, and that's it. Yeah.
Now let's go to the specifics, beginning with the very last film we saw, which is Nyamima.
Yeah.
What was the motivation for this? Yes, yeah, that's your question.
Okay, so for me, I was looking at telling. I lost my voice, so for me, I was looking at telling a simple story about love, loss, and living in love, and also exploring the concept of Ghanaian funeral culture through the lens of men. And also, I was looking forward to exploring the funeral culture and also explore more of grief. When it comes to grief, it's super isolating for men. There isn't really enough space for men who are grieving. That is why I just decided to tell a story of that explores men grieving. And a part of it is when our main character, Kwame, now went back home for his father's funeral. The very first bit, we saw that his mother belongs to a community of women who are in the church. And when we look around our society, we tend to see that when women are grieving, there are other women or there are communities that hold spaces for them when they are grieving. But then when men are grieving, there really isn't enough intentional holding of space for men grieving. So it makes the loss very isolating and even makes it more isolating if the said man is a queer man. Yeah.
There was this first philosophical statement I got in the film, and I like to quote: "When life wears you out, come home and rest." What are you trying to achieve in that statement we saw and we heard?
I was looking at talking about going back home, talking about really finding ourselves wherever it is you call home. To some, it might be Accra. To most people, it might be outside of Accra. And as we know, Accra is full of people who have traveled from different regions to really come live life here. Personally, for me, my parents are from the Brong-Ahafo region, but then I've lived in mostly Burkina Faso and Accra all my life. So for me, the concept of home to me is when someone really asks me where is home, I would automatically think about Accra if I'm thinking of Ghana, or think of Ouagadougou if I'm thinking of Burkina Faso. So for me, it just made me want to really re-examine what home means for different people. If I tell you when life wears you out, go back home, where would you call home? And then to also bring your question back to the film we just saw, we saw an underlining theme of the film is the queerness of it. So when life wears you out, come back home. We all know what is currently happening in Ghana right now when the government is trying to pass this anti-LGBT law and at the same time asking everyone to come back home. But then how are you asking people to come back home, even as Ghanaians? It says come back home. Everyone is after the year of return, come buy a property, come get a land here. But what it is really saying is that come back home if only you are a straight Christian heterosexual identifying man. So then really, what is the question of home when it comes to queerness? Yeah, I hope your question is answered.
It's answered. You were part of the direction. You were part of directing the film, Mohammed. Huh? The last one, Nyamima. That's your film. Okay. So in terms of direction, what went into it?
That's
I'm asking a question relating to production.
okay.
Yeah, because I saw silhouette, I saw all kinds of features that you used in getting this film to your audience.
A lot went into it because, first of all, right from scripting, I knew the kind of story I wanted to tell. And I never for a moment forgot where I live or which country I'm making the story in. So the very first thing that went into it was to make sure that at the end of the day, I'm making a very beautiful story that leans towards, that has more universal human resonance because we both know when it comes to representation of queerness in media, even in Hollywood, in novels and literature, in television, it is often hypersexualized. So then I was looking at telling a story which is not sexualized. I was looking at telling a story that is, it's a young man who has lost his father, who is back home, who reconnected with the people back home. So I just needed to consider all these factors to be able to make sure that this important story I'm telling would be able to view by everyone. And irrespective of where the film is screened. You don't have to be a queer man. You don't even have to be a man to really have gone through loss or to really have experienced what the characters did experience. And yeah, that brought me back to casting. I had to make sure that when it got to casting, I was casting people whose social politics also does align with the film that we were making, because there had been a lot of actors who had read the script and were like, you know what, under this current political climate, I don't think there's a story I want to be a part of. I'd had crew members who go like, you know what, this is a beautiful story, but I really can't be a part of. And for me, the honesty was something I super appreciated, because if we were going to go on this journey together, I would want at every point in time, if anyone should ask you about the film, you able to talk about it in a very beautiful way. So having to put the crew together, having to get the cast together, and even being very intentional about the kind of imagery that I was really putting out there as well was also very necessary. So a lot really went into the making the film, from writing to pre-production, production, right into post-production. And every part of it, I was super intentional.
Now, let me ask a question about the next one, which is Method Madness. That was so short, only 2 minutes.
Yes, please.
Can you explain to us what that was supposed to communicate?
I think it's about a woman who kidnaps a politician that's involved in Galamsey. And so they are holding them hostage in their room. No, that's not. I don't. I am. It's about a lawyer who has decided to leave his wife or partner for a colleague at work because she is manic depressive. Not the colleague at work, but the one he's married to, and she's not having it. So she has tied him nakedly in the house. And she's watching a news or newses. Please, are you the brother of Daniel Quashigah?
Daniel is actually my nephew.
He's your oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it has been turning in my head. That's why I wanted to ask you.
Okay, that's fine.
Cool.
Yeah. That was very smart of you to do that. But has anybody seen it yet? Have
Seen what?
Seen your 2 minutes?
I think a few people on Instagram. It's actually directed and written by Kabuki Akiwumi.
Yeah.
She just asked me to film it and edit it and be tied.
Now let's move to Baby Something. That's another one. Very interesting. She's not in.
Oh, Nicole, yeah, Matthew, she has
Nicole
left.
is not here.
Yes, please.
It's unfortunate.
Yes.
But what are your general impressions about? Although
I was so stressed watching the film. It was like a lot of. I mean, I was there for my first child's birth, and in America, you have to. I don't know the laws now, but in that time, we had our first child. The mom had to go back to work quite soon, so I was with the child most of the time, my son, and it's a lot of work, and so I was stressed, and I feel it was nicely communicated and very well composed, the film. Yeah. But yeah, so congrats and kudos to her.
Yeah, okay. So let's move now to Papa's life lessons that you were clearly a part of.
Yeah.
Jane is not here, but you can give us an insight, first of all, into the storyline. How did you come by this whole storyline?
I'm just the editor of the film,
Yeah.
not the director or the writer. So I don't know how he came about the story, but I think when my personal view with the story, when I read the story for the first time, he sent to me, I was really emotional to the story because I never had the chance to have that kind of conversation with my dad. I've never really sat with my dad to talk like a father and son because he is not around. He's not dead, but he's not around. he traveled when I was 10 years old and he never came back. So we've never really had that kind of conversation. It's just recently that we started having even deep conversation when my mom passed. My mom passed out away 3 weeks ago.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Sorry
so
about that.
it's now that we're having that kind of conversation. So when I first read the story, I was really emotionally attached to it because I felt like all those conversations that I didn't have with my dad, I'm having it here, and I'm able to edit this film and turn it around and make it look good for the audience to also connect with it. And so from the beginning of the pre-production to post-production, I was really connected to the idea and the story. So I really put myself in it when I was editing. Yeah.
This may not be your work, all right, but as a filmmaker, what does that make you feel? This film about Papa's life lessons.
I think, first of all, Gene is an incredible, talented storyteller, and this is my third time seeing this film, and every time I see it, it's still very refreshing. And he has been able to find his own visual language, which I really love. All the films we saw this afternoon, all the four films from Kabuki Akumi to Nicola Matefiu, Jen Edu, and my film, these are stories from four Ghanaian filmmakers with like distinctively like different visual language. And for me, it's super exciting that even though the industry is very small, everyone is given the chance, or everyone is still trying to find out or find what like their visual language is and free to tell the kind of stories they want to tell. And I really love Papa's Life Lessons. I feel like it's going to be one of those movies that will be a classic, and you could watch it every Father's Day.
I'll be yielding the microphone to the audience to ask questions, make comments, and so on. But while we try to get people to get involved in it, how do you see this film industry in Ghana, say, the next 5 years? You can take turns to respond to this.
I think in the next 5 years, we'll start seeing something that looks like public cinemas popping around the country. I feel like people are just going to go out with projectors in different towns and just project their films on, on surfaces that are conducive. And yeah, I feel that's where we're going back to like an analog-ish kind of way of disseminating these stories and visuals. Especially because film is not something you can consume easily on social media. You can only get bits and pieces of it, but the feeling of watching a film with a group of people is still like one of the top feelings, I remember going to watch Commando at Ghana Films, and I remember that by the screen, I know you guys don't remember this, but by the screen they would have a traditional ensemble like in Chin Chin with drums. So even though Commando has its own soundtrack and stuff, they will be playing traditional music. When the action is going on, they'll be playing the drums, So I feel like we are going back into that direction where films will become part of parties, house parties, public events. I think is the best way or the most effective way to spread our. So that's how I see the movie industry. I see it becoming more community-based. Yeah.
Is there a future for films in Ghana?
Yeah, I strongly believe in what Wanlov said, and community cinema is going to be the future. I see people going out of their way to bring projectors in parks, like growing up what the churches used to do. And I think the future, whenever I think about the future of Ghanaian film, I think about like the past of cinema. And to me, my earliest introduction to cinema were community cinemas and the churches coming around. And for a very long time, I'd always thought that if the Ghana film industry is going to grow for a country that has a lot of churches, that has a lot of religious people, I felt like the church were going to have really great influence in making great movies, because the churches were the reason why most people ever had communal cinema in the first place. So I also think the future of Ghanaian film is going to be a lot of collectives. It's going to be a lot of young filmmakers coming together to make films in their own way. And then also, if you talk about the future of Ghanaian cinema or even the future of Ghanaian films, we should really start talking about spaces for these films to be screened, because usually when people talk about the future of Ghanaian film, we don't even have cinema spaces. And for a country that has about just two cinemas, that's Silverbed and I mean, if about two or yeah, two, not more than two other cinemas around, we need to have more spaces. Otherwise, we'll end up making films that, yeah, we'll probably be able to travel around the world and screen the film to other people outside, while we don't even show the film to the people who the film were even made about. So the future of Ghana cinema, I think, one, is a lot of collectives and then also public cinema spaces again.
Then I can begin to take questions and comments.
Yeah, so currently, one of our biggest challenge that I'm seeing is film business. How the industry is losing money, and we are not really understanding the film business. And I think that's one of our challenge now. How do we distribute our films and to the public and to the outside world, and also make money to make the next film? And that's one thing that I'm seeing, that it's now a challenge. And in the next 5 years, and I've seen people also learning the business side of filmmaking now. So I'm seeing that in the next 5 years to come, we will have new guys that are coming in with new ideas for us to make money in the industry, and also be able to push our film forward. Because if we are making the film and we are not making money, how do we make the next film? How do we do it to make it bigger? So I'm seeing a lot of guys now. I have some few colleagues who are now going back to learn the business of film, and I think that's one thing that I'm looking forward to, and I think that's the thing that will change a lot of things in our industry. Because now, if we talk about the talent, the creativeness, we have them. We have a lot of great guys, a lot of good cinematographers, editors, you can name it. But it's more of the money. How do we make money when we make our film? And how do we expand the industry and add a lot of facilities and equipment and stuff to our film to be able to take it to the next level? I'm seeing that in the next 5 years, that's going to happen, and it all includes what they said. The cinemas and all those things will come in place. Yeah.
Question? Okay, Dr. Azanu, yes. Okay.
Thank you so much for the wonderful productions. I was touched by all of the films. But my question is for Nyamima. Which spaces have you screened the movie apart from here? And then what have been the reactions?
So I have screened the film, apart from here, it screened at the Accra Indie Film Festival, and it also did screen at the Black Star International Film Festival. That has been like the Ghanaian spaces, but then we've had some festivals in Europe. We've screened in multiple spaces in Berlin. We've screened in Denmark. We've screened in Stockholm. We've screened in London. We've screened in Paris. We've screened in Brest. We've had like quite European screening, and for every space that we screen, and I get super excited that I have been able to, one, make a local language film that is being screened and being accepted in all these spaces. But then also another reason why I also love it is the fact that people are able to resonate with it, and it transcends even culture and spaces. So far, the reception for the film has been incredible. Yeah.
Thank you very much for all. Again, my question too is for Nyamema. So in the beginning of your short, it says churches build prisons. And the way I understood that was, the psychological imprisonment of moral constraints. But I'm wondering if you could elaborate on what your thoughts were in writing that.
Okay, so about the churches building prisons, it was part of one of the last, that very character, the radio presenter character, was one of the last characters I wrote for the film. And after that, I knew I wanted to make a political film, but then not really on the nose. So, in as much as I wanted my characters to be the everyday Ghanaian who were just living and moving through space, there were certain things I needed them to say, but then not the characters that the film is about. Those are characters that we do not even see. So the churches building prisons and the governments building churches, it's exactly what we are experiencing here in Ghana. There is, how much is it? $51 million of a pit for the cathedral. I mean, what business does the government have building church? And the Church of Pentecost is equally also building prisons. So this is the country we live in. And if we live in a country where the government decides to build church and the churches decides to build prison, then we are really not headed anywhere, because once you don't do what the church asks you to do, there is space for them to throw you in jail, which I feel is like super problematic, and it's something that we should really look at. We shouldn't be in a space that the church has the right to build prisons. Why are churches building prisons when there are other amenities or there are other stuff that the church could actually do? Churches have no business in building prisons. Yeah.
Any more question or comment from the audience? Okay, over there.
Okay, thank you. Two questions. First one, you mentioned a lot of European screening. Is there any deliberate effort to screen it locally so that it will have more impact here than outside? Two, the main character, is there a reason why you had his hair yellow or dyed up? I mean, in terms of characterization, what went into the thinking?
Okay, so when the film was ready in March, and a few days to the first private screening, the government, the bill was passed, like in government, like in parliament again. So then I just decided, you know what, I wasn't safe. I couldn't assure the safety of my characters, of my entire crew. So then I just decided, you know what, this is not the time to screen this film. Maybe, I mean, it's a good film, but then it's just probably not the time for me to screen it in Ghana. So I had to cancel my private screening. But interestingly, on 6th March this year, I screened it because I felt like if there's ever a time to screen this film, it's really on Independence Day. If I can't even screen a film I made on Independence Day, then what's the point of celebrating independence of a country? So I still went ahead and had a screening during the Independence Day, who was super intentional. And also, it's not really a deliberate attempt to really screen in all these European and American spaces. I just decided that it was good to submit the film for festivals, and it's pretty much been doing well in these spaces. And honestly, I wish I could screen this film in more Ghanaian spaces, because it is a Ghanaian film and I made it for Ghanaians. And when it comes to the character as well, about his hair, I wrote this in a point where I was super buried in a lot of dye. I used to dye my face a lot. I used to have like multiple colors on my face. And I think 2 nights to the shoot, I told the character, you know what, I have seen you in every movie, and for every film I've seen you, you look the same. Could you really do something about your hair for me? And he asked what. I was like, let's put some dye in it. And he agreed to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations to all the filmmakers. You know, the work are so powerful on so many levels and so deep. It will go far. I had a specific question for the last film. I don't want to mispronounce your name, but Joewackle.
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 Yes.
I would like you to speak a bit to the symbolism of the guinea fowl, and I'll explain why. So in the Black Atlantic sense, in both in the North America and definitely in the Caribbean, in Haiti and in Jamaica, the guinea fowl is very symbolic historically. So in the Haitian Revolution, for example, it was a symbol of resistance. And the fact that this bird has resisted domestication, it cannot be tamed. You try, you put it in that cage for years and then let it out, it's back to its old ways. However, I also noticed in your film that, and I hope I got this right, that he ate the guinea fowl. So I was kind of thrown off by that because I actually expected that he would have the guinea fowl had a role to play in the end. He would have gone back home with the guinea fowl or let it go or something, but he ate it. So could you just speak to that? He was hungry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the guinea fowl also was, I shot the film in the Volta region and also parts in the Western region, which is 2nd D. And the guinea fowl, a day to the first day on set in 2nd D, I told my arts director, I told him I feel I need the character to have something with him because I just need the character to have something, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And I just thought a guinea fowl would be a beautiful idea because, one, growing up, I ate guinea fowl before I ate chicken. Up in Burkina Faso, that's all we eat. We eat a lot of guinea fowl. So I thought it would be so cool since this character was coming from up north. It would be cool that he comes home with a guinea fowl. But apart from personal experience with guinea fowl as well, for me, is making film is also a part of documenting Ghanaian culture and Ghanaian history as well. And if we come to Ghana politically, we all had a president one time, which the news, I mean, that could also be the manipulation of the media or how the media carries the news. But once upon a time, we all had a president here who, according to the news, invested heavily in guinea fowl. And when it was time for accounting, they said the guinea fowl, Burkina Faso. So for me, they said these guinea fowl flew to Burkina Faso. So for me, this is also an instance of me being able to document Ghanaian political history for years to come. If anyone watches the film, we heard the character say, "Oh, we menyankwa ofi Burkina Faso," which for every Ghanaian, once you know the story of Guinea fowl, the story of Burkina Faso, and the political relevance of it, it was very important for me to put that in. And at the end of he eating the guinea fowl or the guinea fowl being killed like that, it was an editing choice, and it was one of those shots that I had decided I was going to add to the film. But there was a scene that couldn't make it into the film, and that very scene was a scene at the funeral where one of the aunties was angry and was complaining to the mother that, oh, she's been in the house for the funeral since morning, but then she hasn't been fed. Thank you. One of the aunties said she's been at the funeral since morning, but she hasn't been fed. And the family members go like, this guy brought a guinea fowl. You can just put it on fire. But I didn't add those scenes because I just decided to keep the cameras or keep the point of view of the stories very narrow. But that scene was to explore that even in the heat of our funeral culture, our culture puts a lot of burden on people mourning to still feed or take care of people who had really come into the house to mourn with them, which I find it very, very problematic.
Anybody else? Over there. I think Kusi? Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Those were really lovely films and documentaries. My first question is to Wanlov. Since you did the filming, if I heard you well, yeah, it was really great. I was yearning for more. I was wondering if there will be a longer version to unpack it. But you mentioned that you either it's on Instagram, or I'm wondering the response and feedback you've got from showing it over there in terms of Is it provoking conversations around mental health issues, etc.? And then next one is for Papa's life lessons. Since you did the editing, lovely editing, I love the shots from above and then the ones from the side. And then also, I think it was like 3 generations. At the point I was confused, but in the end, everything came together beautifully, and I want to commend you for that. Thanks.
So the film is. I read some of the comments at the beginning, but I post a lot on Instagram, so I don't remember some of the comments, but I think they were cool. Yeah, Buki was trying to make a film a week, Kabuki Akiomi, just trying to get practice in. So that's one of she's made several films which are on her Instagram. And so Kabuki Akiwumi, you can check it on Instagram. She has a lot of short films she makes. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. If we don't have any more questions from the audience, I'd like to ask, before you go, I'd like to ask a question. Films capture our cultural values. To what extent was that a consideration for this film that you put together? Yeah, that's to you. Especially when you use the local language to portray such an important subject matter. To what extent are cultural values a consideration for this production?
Yeah, I think one thing that I love doing across all stories, across every medium that I decide to tell stories, it's re-examine these set cultural values. It's these very cultural values that we are talking about. With time and in spaces, we need to re-examine all these values. We need to ask ourselves the questions: why have these values been held onto for so long? And for me, when the credit is rolling, I just need people asking the relevant questions. One of the things I need to do when I'm making films is that apart from entertaining people as well, I'm looking at us having really important and uncomfortable conversations as well, and which also includes re-examining these cultural values that I would like to really, honestly, I'll be very happy if you could tell me some of these cultural values. Yeah.
I don't think the you means me necessarily. But okay, one of them, if I were to respond to this, is the use of language. And that in itself is a demonstration of our cultural values. The kinds of linguistics, the kinds of expressions that you find in that film reflect who we are. They reflect our sensibilities. They reflect our sensitivities. They reflect our whole psychological makeup. And that for me stood out because you were mindful of who we are, which is why, although you made the film, you canned it because you thought that the time wasn't ripe enough for it. Yeah, so that's why I'm actually asking the question to see to what extent you were conscious of these cultural values in relation to what language you deployed, when and where to even premiere it, and so on and so forth. But I also wasn't too comfortable when I had a feeling that you were sort of either self-censoring in trying to show this in the West rather than here. I think that our democracy has come a long way to the extent that I don't think we should be self-censoring to that extent. But I know you are in the industry. Feel at home.
I really don't think it's more of self-censoring, and even for us to even use self-censoring as a freelance filmmaker, for us to even be in a space where we talk about our democracy coming a long way, which I think it's a big lie, because we all know what has been happening in the country within the last 2 weeks, where our democracy really hasn't come a long way if I can't freely screen my film, and it really hasn't come a long way if 53 people will be arrested for protesting. So, yeah, there really is a lot of moral values that, or cultural values that we look at when making some of these films. And yeah,
So I think it's more of cautious values, not
yes,
cultural.
yes,
cautious.
it's more of that.
A question? Okay, there. Please send the microphone.
Now, I don't know whether I have a question as much as a comment. I couldn't follow generally everything, that was going on, because I was trying to read and at the same time, watch and so forth and so on. But I wondered about the significance of the funeral as a one place where we meet. And for us in the exile from here, that is, we live in the exile. We're exilic. I'm an exilic African man in America. Death was a way of going home. And I looked at the guinea fowl. I've been in Antwerp, sacrifice of chickens, all kinds of things. And it's a beautiful religion down there that I found in my coming to Ghana, that maybe Ghanaians don't like it. But maybe our people on this side are coming to it. So in some sense, your film is highly political. Are you saying we need to come home and die in the process and start life all over and be restored? I saw all those kinds of things in your film or in your documentary. And it's heavy and deep. And all of the films were. So I just want to comment on that. That funeral is rest, but funeral is the channel to the ancestral world. And are you calling for the ancestral life? Again, the resurrection. Something has bellied up in Ghana and in Africa. And there's a pleading by young people that we need to reverse this situation. And so where everybody might belong to the village again. And that's why when in the exile, I should tell you that I have been in Ghana 60 times. And in many other African countries. But I came here looking for something. And I didn't always find it. I was dissatisfied with my exilic life in the Babylonian exile. And I was coming because I wanted to come home. And death was a way of coming home. That is symbolically so in the world I lived in. You get me? And so I wonder whether or not you're toying with some ideas and that you have recognized the church as a hindrance to that. It could be. So your film is provocative. It is telling us something about our society, which I appreciate very much. And so I've come for a good education today.
So on that note, I'd like to thank our panelists, Wanlov, Majeed, and Joewackle. Thank you very much.